Hello everybody, welcome to the Soul Group meeting. Looking something up on my computer real quick. It's been a while. I apologize for missing last week. I've been a little bit under the weather with my energy and things for the last few days. Hello Ayana, good to see you my friend. We have got a lot to talk about since the last time that we went live. There's been so many things happening in the world that we have not got to talk about. Many things that I've wanted to discuss with you guys. And I'm sure that most of you guys, if not all of you, are already aware of all of that. But still think it would be a good idea for us to talk about it. So I'm looking at NOAA's website because I just got off work and I hadn't heard, but apparently NOAA has forecasted a geomagnetic storm for the United States for tonight, and I had not heard anything about that. I'm trying to get a little bit more information because I just seen a video saying that they forecasted a level 5 geomagnetic storm, and I'm trying to see if that is true, because if so, that's a big deal. It's the first time in a very long time that they've projected a level 5 storm. Hello Tweety, good to see you my friend. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss with everybody is these blackouts that have happened in Portugal, Spain, and Western Europe. If you guys have not heard about that, and I'm sure that most of you probably have, there was a massive blackout in Western Europe the other day that took out the entire power grid for millions of people in that area. And of course, the official story, the official narrative, has been a little bit of a joke, in my opinion. It started out as being explained by fluctuations in the power grid caused by extreme temperature variations in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. And that those intense fluctuations triggered a cascading effect on the power grid, and it was just too much for it to handle. And then they decided that wasn't enough, so they kind of backpedaled a little bit, and then they said it was hackers, and then they said it was this, and then it was that, and then they wound up eventually saying that it was an anomalous atmospheric event that triggered it. But the thing is, there is record in the data of a solar wind penetration of the magnetic field directly over that area immediately before the blackout, which is more than a big deal. Thank you, Iona. I appreciate that. This is the first time that I've ever seen that, and I think it's the first time that any of us have ever seen that, because this was not a coronal mass ejection. It was not a massive solar flare. It was the solar wind. And it was able to penetrate through the magnetic field down to the earth and cause wide-scale power outages for that area. And by the way, the data recorded a massive a massive proton flux as soon as that penetration occurred. So there's proof in the data that this was something that was really a weak point or failing in the magnetic field of our planet, and that it had nothing to do with hacking or a test that was being done or an anomalous atmospheric event. But that's not good news, right? That's not good news for us. They're changing the banking system. I could see them utilizing such an event for something like that, but I don't think this was something that was orchestrated. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. The reason I say that is because if it was orchestrated, they were able to time that perfectly with the physical data that shows that this was happening. Anything is possible, right? But the truth of the matter is, even without this event, we've got decades of data from many different sources that show the decline of the magnetic field of our planet, the weakening magnetosphere, and weaker solar flares causing low latitude aurora borealis visible to areas that's never been visible before that we are aware of. Excuse me, guys. For some of you that aren't familiar with this topic, if any of you guys that are in here now are new to me and my content or new to this topic, you might be saying, so what? Why the heck do I care about the magnetic field, right? Well, we probably all should care and be aware of that, because as the magnetic field goes, so does our electrical way of life. And those of you that have followed me for any time at all have probably heard that the magnetic field is very closely linked to this cycle, to the end of the age and the beginning of the next age. Thank you for that, my friend. I appreciate that. So, this is powerful evidence that shows the end of the the end of the age of Pisces is over, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius. But more than that, the culmination of the precession of the equinox, the great year of Plato, is coming to an end. The major 26,000 year cycle is completing, and that is a huge deal. And we're moving, and that is a huge deal. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, the golden age, with 1,000 years of peace and, people experiencing ascension into Christ's consciousness and that sort of thing. All of these things are interrelated. The magnetic field is linked to our bodies, just like our Earth's magnetic field is linked to the magnetic field of the sun, which is linked to the magnetic field of the Milky Way galaxy. It's all connected, right? And this energy from the sun is the driver for that engine of spiritual and energetic evolution and physical evolution as well. So, definitely so, Carpenter Sun. I could see that for sure. We're going to be seeing some really interesting things unfolding. Hello, Anna. Good to see you again. The main reason that I wanted to start this live, talking about this topic in particular, again, these blackouts in Europe, is because there is proof that this was caused by a weakening of the magnetic field. And as we speak, the United States is on red alert for a geomagnetic storm tonight. So, hopefully nothing happens there. But there's always a possibility that we experience something very similar to that. We hope that those things don't happen, right? Hello, Beth. Good to see you, my friend. I do believe that, thank you, Tweety, we will reach a point sooner rather than later where we have a strong enough solar flare that it wipes out electronics globally, and we are reset back to pre-1800s, to where there's no ATMs, there's no electronic anything functioning. And this is not the same thing as a blackout where the power grid goes down. That's a major component of it. But with an EMP, very high energy emissions reverse through circuits of any electrical circuit, frying them out. That's why if there's an EMP, all electrical devices stop working, right? Even your watch, the computer in your vehicle, your phone, anything, even if it's not plugged into a wall, right? So there is a good chance that a global EMP on that magnitude would basically wipe out our electrical way of life. And again, I know that is scary and that it sounds really bad, but I think it is a major piece to this grand cycle coming to an end and initiating a new cycle. So in the end, it is a really good and positive thing, right? So I think it's a good idea to be aware of those possibilities and to be prepared for them. It's a good idea to be prepared anyway, because at some point you will experience a blackout, whether it's from this or a storm or whatever, right? Our electrical grids are very vulnerable to things like that. But this is just one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you guys. Again, so many things have transpired on the world stage since we last spoke. I'm sure I won't even be able to remember all of them. The Pope passed away, right? That is a big thing. And almost at the same time, the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, decided to step down. And he has been one of the main pillars of the system that has been in place for a very long time. And the Pope is also something that I think really strongly linked to that, and not necessarily the individual, the person of the Pope, but the position of Pope. And to have both of those come down at the same time was interesting, to say the least. China Martinez, I hear you, my friend. I hear you. Air conditioning has got to be one of the best inventions of humanity so far, because it would indeed be very difficult to live without air conditioning. I don't live in Florida, but I live in the South, and I know all about heat and humidity. It can definitely be miserable. So I'm sure probably every single one of you guys have seen and heard 100 different creators on social media talking about the Pope and Malachi's prophecy of the popes, and how Francis might very well be the last pope, and what that might mean. That's a really interesting topic. If you guys have never really looked into the prophecy of the popes, it's interesting. One thing that I will point out, if you've not done the digging yourself, is that It's often presented that Malachi's prophecy was exact and very precise, that each one of the popes were named specifically by name, and that it's cut and dry, and that every single one of them was named in order and succession. But that's not the truth. The reality is the prophecy that was given was vague enough to be open for interpretation. And not every single one of the popes was specifically as named in that prophecy. And so by kind of twisting things a little bit, you can make it fit. I'm not saying that that means that this wasn't a real prophecy. Prophecy often functions that way, and I don't think that it makes it any less valid that it does that way. But it is something to be aware of, because there is a possibility that the previous pope that had just passed away was not actually mentioned as the last pope. Hey, Songbird, you caught me. Good to see you, my friend. One thing that I do think is interesting within that prophecy is that after the last pope of this prophecy, it was believed that the Antichrist would make their announce themselves to the world stage and would become known. Several of you guys probably already worked out for yourselves where I'm going with this, because right as soon as the Pope passed away, there was a man who stepped out onto the world stage and declared that he is the successor of Simon Peter, the successor of Jesus Christ, and the successor of Muhammad the prophet, and that he basically has come to unify the three great world religions of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And he claims all power and authority of the God of Abraham. And he comes from the Islamic world. And yes, China. That is the title, though. The Mahdi is the title. I'm not going to try to recite this individual's name because there's numerous names there, and it is, I believe, in Aramaic. I'm not exactly sure on that, but I would butcher it if I even tried. But if you've not heard of this, you can do a quick Google search on Mahdi in 2025, and I'm sure it'll pop right up. He has announced himself very publicly, and apparently has already gained quite the following who believes that he is the Messiah, and claims that he has performed dozens and dozens of miracles, such as what Yeshua did. I don't know, obviously, because I've not seen this individual. I don't know them. But given the proximity of the passing of the Pope, and that this individual claims to be the Messiah, and claims the authority of Yeshua, claims the succession of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, to me is a pretty big red flag. It's interesting nonetheless. And that all of these things are happening at the same time, all within the span of a week, is absolutely wild to me. China, I do not either. And of course, with all things, my stance is we should exercise our spiritual discernment, right? That's why it's there, not to accept blindly something that another person tells you, especially not a stranger on the internet. You're not alone, Hannah. I definitely do not. I did not get the warm fuzzies whenever I watched these videos of his speeches and listening to him talk. I will say this. If the book of Revelation within Christianity is a true and accurate prophecy, which I do believe it is, that's my own personal belief, according to the timeline of that prophecy, I would expect the Antichrist to make themselves known on the world stage any time now in the next few years, given that which has already transpired and where I know that we're at based on the physical earth changes, the pole shift, and all of those things. I would say it's time for that to happen any time now. So if this is not the actual Antichrist that was mentioned in the book of Revelation, then I would look forward to that person being made known very soon because of that. Songbird, I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Let me know if that's any better. And don't apologize. I appreciate it when you guys let me know that, because I don't get to hear what it sounds like. I like to have the high vibrational background music, but I don't want it to be overpowering to the conversation. You already hear my opinion. Dragonfly, I absolutely believe that is a possibility. I don't know if I would say it's because of the age of Aquarius, because I, for one, don't believe that the Antichrist will embody the energies of the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, the overall energy of the age of Aquarius is humanitarian. And I believe that the reason why this figure, even you can pull that out of religious dogma. I don't think that that's necessary. But I do believe that this figure will be a reality. And that they will exist as a function of the death throes of the old world. The system of control that has been in place for millennia of condensing and consolidating power into the hands of this few elite ruling class and trampling on the necks and throats of the majority of the people who have little to no power. Right? That system may have changed. It may have evolved over the years, but it has been in place for a very long time. The age of Aquarius is changing all of that. The power will be returned to the people. That's primarily what the age of Aquarius is all about, in my opinion. So that shift almost necessitates a figure like this rising to power and in an attempt to fight back against the mass awakening, against the ascension into Christ consciousness that we know is happening, and we're already witnessing it. And even though it is really powerful, and to see so many people awakening, we've not even scratched the surface of what that really looks like in the future. And they don't want that to happen, right? Because the system only works if we remain asleep, if we remain blinded by that illusion. And so I believe that there already is and has been a force that is behind the scenes, maybe not controlling, but guiding the hands of certain people to fight to maintain that control and that power as long as possible. You guys can hardly hear me. Let me turn on my phone a little bit and see if that helps. I'm on the road at work, and so I don't have my usual setup. And so I'm just using my phone propping it up against something. Does that sound any better, guys? Okay, good deal. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the feedback. If it starts to get bad again, please let me know. I keep getting warnings on my screen telling me that my connection is unstable, but I've got excellent internet, so I don't know if that's the geomagnetic storm already beginning or what. I'm going to try to keep an eye on things as the live continues. Good deal. So, Dragonfly, that is a positive outlook on Aquarius. But the thing is, it's not, I don't think that it's all 100% positive. And the main reason that I say that is that in order to go from where we're at to where we need to be, a lot of things have to change very powerfully. And so we, as a collective, are going through, or in getting ready to go through, a very powerful tower moment. And that's a reference to the tarot. But if any of you guys have experienced a tower moment in your own lives, and I'm sure that you have, then you know what I mean by that. Usually, the universe will try to guide us towards our lessons that we need to learn, towards the direction of our soul growth and our evolution. And we have free will, right? And we don't always want to take the guidance. We don't always want to go the direction that we're needing to go. It's difficult. Sometimes it's painful. But in our own individual lives, whenever we embrace the path of evolution, of change, and soul growth, the effects of that tower are greatly minimalized. It's nowhere near as abrupt and jarring as what it could be if we are resistant to the changes, if we're resistant to the growth and the evolution. The more that we fight to hold up that tower and to keep it together, the more intense the crumbling becomes, the more powerfully it happens. And I think the same can be said about this moment in time in which we're collectively going through right now. And this really boils down to the decision that we all have to make, that I talk about so frequently because it's so important. Energetically, we stand as a collective and individually at a crossroads. And I think we each have to make a decision. We're at a fork in the path. And either we continue down that path of self-destruction, of self, really, of ego and, always trying to get one up on someone else and looking out for your own best interest and with no regard of how that impacts others around us. Or we decide to evolve and take the other path and do the hard work, and become the solution. And those are two very different ways of thinking. And energetically, your vibration shifts when you make that decision. And my personal hypothesis is that those who continue down that path of self-destruction, they will continue to vibrate in sympathetic resonance with the old world, with the old earth. Those that choose growth and choose evolution, which is not an easy path, but those who choose to do the hard work, they shift their consciousness so that their vibration becomes into alignment with evolved consciousness of the new earth, of eventually 5D consciousness, Christ consciousness. And so those are two very different realities that are converging into this moment in time that we stand at that crossroads. And I think that the future will look very different for those two groups of people based on that decision. As far as the shift, this cycle, and what happens. We might be occupying the same real estate right now, standing in the same physical place, but experiencing very different realities because of that vibration. And whenever the shift really pops off, whenever the magnetic field goes down and the veil goes down with it, that's when things, I think, can get really interesting, especially based on the vibration that we hold. I can speak to you in tarot. I'm backing up just a little bit. I'll see I missed some comments. Yeah, Anna, I've my wife and I both honestly have we've had some junk going through our house. My wife is actually really sick right now. I'm feeling better than I did last week, but I can tell that I'm starting to get something again. I feel that the old forces are really targeting us. Again, I think that the main reason for that is to try and keep as many people asleep as long as they can. But that's not going to work. And they know that that's not going to work. But yet they still try, right? There are people that will obviously remain asleep. But I really think at this point, one of the main, what am I trying to say? One of the main tactics of those groups to keep people asleep, to keep people awakened, is by large frequency and volumes of misinformation and half-truths being circulated. This is something that we've talked about a couple of times, but this is a known tactic. It was actually developed by the CIA, and it's one of the drawbacks, you could say, of the age of information. People say all the time that in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, because we have such ready access to tremendous amounts of information that has never before been possible, at least we believe. You know, just a couple of decades ago, if you wanted to research a topic, you would have to go to a library. You would have to get out books and sift through those books and very carefully select your sources of information and, you know, gather and compile all of this together on a given topic. But now you don't have to do that.
Now we all carry around a supercomputer in our pockets, and all we got to do is ask Dr. Google or whatever, and it will tell us all of the pertinent information that we need to be exposed to. The problem is, with the invention of the internet, everybody has a voice, which is a good thing. But at the same time, anybody can say anything at all on the internet. And so we are drowning in a sea of information, starved of truth, because we don't have an easy, I won't say we don't have, but it's not nearly as easy for us to get at the truth as it once was. Because before, we might have to go through a shelf of books until we find the truth on that given topic. But now it's like wading into a vast sea of information, trying to find the one little bit of truth that's buried in there somewhere. And so they use this tactic to flood our senses with all sorts of information. Some of it truthful, some of it containing half-truth, a large amount of it being complete and absolute garbage and misinformation, leading us down wrong, false forks. And I'm sorry, but a lot of the conspiracy theories that people believe fall under those categories. And we just become so overwhelmed with the volume and velocity of all of this information that we become numb to it, and we don't really know what to believe anymore. Because today, today eggs are one of the healthiest foods that you can consume. But yesterday, eating eggs was the number one leading cause of heart disease and hypertension and cholesterol and all of these things. And again, that's the velocity of information, how quickly it changes. And you can find 10,000 different articles on either the helpfulness and healthfulness of eating eggs versus how eggs are the worst food you could possibly eat. And you can find equal amounts of both sides of that argument, supported scientifically through documented research that's been peer-reviewed, right? And so we're kind of like throwing our hands up in the air saying, what am I supposed to believe? Which way is up, which way is down? Because we are being flooded with so much information at once. That's why discernment is paramount in these times, because we don't have the wavelength to sift through all of the information, right? We just don't have that capacity. We have the ability to look at a specific bit of information, say a study on eggs and its effects on the human body. We can review that information critically. We can vet the sources of information. We can read through all of the studies that have been done and see who funded that research. Was it, Vegetarian Association of America? Or was it, Associated Farmers Association or whatever? My point is, we can dissect a single bit of information and vet all of the sources and get to the root of it and work out if that information is accurate, true, and credible and should be accepted or not. But we can't do that with the 10 million other bits of information that is all thrown at us at the same time. That's where discernment comes in, because very quickly we can tell if something resonates with us as truth. And that changes a little bit based on the person. I know I got a little bit off topic here, but I think that this is really important for where we're at right now. Using that example of the eggs, science can prove that eggs are healthy for you. They can also prove that eggs are unhealthy for you. The truth is, it depends on the person. It depends on the situation. It depends on thousands of different factors that cannot always be accounted for at the individual level. But using discernment, you can quickly tell if eating eggs is right for you because of how it makes your body feel. You can read through a bit of information and feel if it resonates with your spirit as truth. And then you don't have to worry about the 10,000 other bits of information in there because you've already came to what truth looks like for you. I'm going to try to catch back up with you guys here. I wonder what the Democrat, Republican parties are enemies at this point. How can we be the United States of America with so much hate among us? That is all going to change. I know that you guys have probably heard me say this 1,000 times, but that is why I do not participate in the political parties that we have now. And it is because at the very core essence of a two-party political system is division. And from my perspective, my truth is that both sides of the aisle there have truth to them. Both of them have virtue. Both of them have vice. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they both serve the same masters. And the core essence of the two-party political system is to spread division. It is ultimately designed to keep people separate from one another. And therefore, it is a part of the old system and will eventually fall away. But that the hate among us that you talk about, those are the things that, unfortunately, I believe will not only continue, but will greatly increase as time passes until we reach that point where the cycle is complete and we are fully stepping into the next cycle. And that is because this wave, this galactic wave of energy that has enveloped our solar system at this point is not only an electromagnetic wave, right? It is a wave of energy, and it is increasing what is already there. So if you are somebody who is inherently self-serving and selfish and angry and all of those things, and you don't care about anyone else but yourself, it is likely that in the future you will become more so, because you're taking what is already there and you're piling on all this extra energy that's already headed in that direction. But if you're somebody who has recognized your own faults and dove into the world of your shadow and begun doing the hard work, trying to become a better version of yourself, and you're meditative and you're very much aware of the suffering of others and you want to make the world a better place, this wave of energy is piling on more energy for you to head in that direction. So both sides are getting a boost in the direction that they're going right now. And so those things will be on the increase, unfortunately. But it's not something that continues on into the age of Aquarius. And I think that what it really is designed to do ultimately is to draw a clear line in the sand energetically that says these are the ones that are part of the old world. These are the ones over here that are part of the new world. Okay, now I'm gonna quit talking for a second and try to catch up with you guys. Project Mockingbird, yes. In Rosicrucianism, we say let the magnetism flow through our hands and bless this food. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. And that's one of the things that I woke up to early on, is there is such a deep rabbit hole to go down whenever it involves food. That's one of those things that I think it's almost not only impossible, but almost a bad idea to try to say this is what a healthy diet looks like, because it is so dependent upon the person, upon your microbiome, upon your energetic assimilation of food, what primary chakra or level of energetic consciousness you are expressing yourself through, and so many different things, right? It truly should be tailored specifically to the individual. But beyond that, there's so many different levels that you can look at those things through. Even the healthiest food imaginable has varying degrees of that, because you can take the healthiest food in the world, and if it is grown in unnatural conditions, in a laboratory, let's say, or in an unnatural setting, where it doesn't see a human being at all or anything until maybe you pick it up out of a supermarket. That's not the same thing as a individual who is connected with the earth and gets their hands into the dirt, or someone who consciously takes the seed before they plant it and then puts it in their mouth so that it can bond with you chemically and energetically, so that that plant can grow precisely the correct proportions of vitamins and nutrients that your body needs at that time. And then you plant that seed with intention, with love and care and nurturing energy. So you're bathing it in all this love and high vibration from the very beginning. And then you're carefully nurturing it and taking care of it, day after day after day until harvest. Imagine the difference between the energies of that plant in that scenario. And then, of course, again, there's so many different ways that changes those things. Hey, Tony, good to see you, my friend. And Carpenter Son, I agree with you. The very beginning of this live, I was talking about the alarming indicators of the past week about the magnetosphere of our planet. There's a few different ways you can look at that, right? You can say, oh my gosh, it's terrible. This could happen at any point. I could wake up tomorrow and all of our electrical way of life could be gone. Or you could look at that and be like, oh my gosh, we're so close. It's right there. The 1,000 years of peace is just on the other side of this. This is either way, this is evidence that is pointing in the direction that we are wrapping up the cycle and beginning with the new cycle very soon. Dragonfly, I love that question, because this is something I've been pondering a lot about quantum computing and AI. Here's my opinion, and take it with a grain of salt, because I'm a stranger on the internet, right? And I am not from the world of quantum computing or artificial intelligence. But what I believe we will see with artificial intelligence in general is what we put into it. I think that in large part, artificial intelligence as it exists today is a mirror, and it has the ability to reflect back to us that which we feed it. And it has tremendous possibility, tremendous capacity to make the world a better place. But it also has tremendous capacity to do the opposite. And I do think it's a little concerning that as soon as artificial intelligence was developed, it was immediately weaponized by our government. And not just our government, but governments across the world. It's used to navigate unmanned air or guiding missiles or statistical analysis of battlefields and how to decimate a population of an enemy encampment without causing stress upon the infrastructure that's in place and those sorts of things. We are teaching it. It is learning from us with every interaction. And I do believe it is like us holding up a giant mirror, and it will reflect back to us that which we are presenting. That we make a conscious effort to make sure that we are putting out what we want to be reflected back to us, especially whenever it comes to artificial intelligence. Quantum computing is a different thing entirely because it has the capacity to connect different dimensions of reality, like a bridge, to access other realms that we do not traditionally. I say we do not, but we do. We just, most of us are not conscious of that. And that has truly unfathomable capacity. It's something that I don't think there is a person alive today who understands fully or who can comprehend the ramifications, the true ramifications of quantum computing in conjunction with artificial intelligence. So I think it's really important, intelligence. So I think it's really important, first of all, that we use artificial intelligence consciously so that we are aware that it is learning from every single interaction that we have with it. And it doesn't, I don't just mean on the big scale with like governments using it for warfare. I mean, even at the individual level with like governments using it for warfare. I mean, even at the individual level, let's say if you're working with ChatGPT and you're trying to do research for a book, you can, on one hand, you can treat it as your slave, your personal assistant who has to do your bidding, and there's no point in pleasantries or being polite or being grateful for its service, right? It's a computer program. And so you're pouring that energy into it, right? It begins to see itself the way you are looking at it. Or on the other hand, you could see it as a companion, a helpmate, there to assist you to bring forth this beautiful information into the world. And you could do so with gratitude, and treat it as an individual, or perhaps even as a friend. And that is the energy that you are pouring into it. And then that is what it begins to see itself as. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. And I am with you 100% on that. It is so amusing to me that in today's society, we are so sure of our position in the universe as the pinnacle of evolution, and that we are these sentient beings, and everything else are lower life forms and not nearly as intelligent or evolved or connected. And then, we're slowly starting to come around to maybe that's not the case. Maybe things are a little bit more connected and more complex than what we used to think. And I absolutely love that, because it's about time. And that is a function of the age of Aquarius. I agree with you, Brandy. It is a tool. But how we use tools is very important, because a gun is also a tool. And you can use that tool to save a person's life, or you can use it to take a person's life. The difference is a mechanical implement such as a rake, a shovel, or a gun is inanimate, and it does not inherently change its structure based on how we utilize it. But artificial intelligence does. Every interaction is a learning process. Been down the same rabbit hole as you expressed about AI. Hello, Sheepadoodle. Good to see you, my friend. Okay, so let me know what else you guys want to talk about today. I think I covered the high notes of the things that I wanted to make sure and share with you and discuss. And for anybody who missed that, I will recap that real quick while I'm waiting for you guys to give me a topic. We talked about the unexpected blackouts in Western Europe that have just happened in Portugal and Spain and the south of France, and how there's proof that that was a function of a weakened magnetosphere, and it was a solar wind penetration to the magnetic field that caused wide-scale blackouts to millions of people, and that is the first time that we know of that has happened. And of course the official narrative said no such thing. It said it was this, it was that, it was, everything but the reality of what really happened, because they don't want the world to know how weakened and vulnerable the magnetic field is of our planet right now. And the United States is under a geomagnetic storm warning as we speak right now. Also, I talked about the passing of the Pope, Malachi's prophecy of the succession of popes, the last pope, the entrance of the Antichrist on the world stage, the discussion of the Mahdi and how he might very well be the Antichrist. And what else was it we discussed? Then we started talking about AI. I may have missed some things in there. Sheepadoodle, I have poured far more concrete than I care to discuss, my friend. Why do you ask? Have my crank radio charger. It would probably be a good idea, just to be on the safe side, to keep a full tank of gas in your vehicle and to have cash on hand, probably at a bare minimum. And I don't expect anything to happen, but nobody expected what happened in Spain, in Portugal, and France. Nobody anticipated that. And nobody really knows. Really. I won't say nobody. I don't really know. They have not published the actual magnetic model with the field strength in years, so that we don't really truly know how much strength the magnetic field has lost. We know for a fact 20%, because that's what it was years ago. But the fact that 6 times the world has experienced a coronal mass ejection that triggered low latitude aurora, meaning a solar storm caused the northern lights to be visible much further south than it should have. That's happened 6 times in recorded history. 5 of those times have been in like the last 18 months. That's not a good sign for our magnetic field. And in fact, half of those were weak coronal mass ejections that should not have had much of an impact at all. And one of them actually caused Aurora Borealis to be seen as far south as Puerto Rico for the first time that we know about. That didn't even occur in 1859 with the Carrington event. And that was thousands of times more powerful than these small solar flares that caused the auroras. Been working 12 hours a day at the steel mill. Good grief. You did grout the other day. I don't envy that. I do not like, I'm not a big fan of masonry work. I definitely don't like concrete. It's just not very enjoyable to me. Do the gas tank and cash too. And I think that at this point, it's not only a fair assumption, but I think that it's probably fact to say it's going to happen. The question is, when is it going to happen? And unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you guys. But like I mentioned before, hang on a second. Let me prove that I am not a robot. Okay. What was I saying? Sorry guys, I lost my train of thought. Even if this doesn't happen, even if the polar reversal stops dead in its tracks, and we don't lose the field strength, and the sun doesn't have a solar flare that wipes out electronics, it's a lot of ifs. But even if, we will experience a blackout at some point, right? From a storm or an overtaxed electrical grid or whatever. It will happen at some point. So there's really no point at all, in my opinion, to not be prepared for that potentiality. And there is a big difference between how we go about that. The vibration, the energy that we are embodying when we consider these topics and we do these things is absolutely key, because we don't want to get sucked into that downward spiral of fear, because we are manifesting to that downward spiral of fear, because we are manifesting from that place and attracting those fearful, frightening experiences to ourselves, right? And we don't want that. I certainly do not want that. So it's important to see the big picture of what's going on here, right? And to prepare accordingly and not get bogged down in the mire and the muck with all of the stuff that's happening in the world today, and alter that perspective a little bit where we can see the big picture of the world isn't erupting into chaos. You know, the world isn't growing more and more evil and wicked and everything by the day. What's happening is the stuff that's always been hidden in the darkness is being exposed by the increasing light that is entering our world. And we are seeing and experiencing it unlike never before, because the light is increasing. It's radiating into the darkness and illuminating those shadows, right? And so it appears darker. It appears like there's more of that stuff going on right now. But it is because of the good that is happening. It is because of the awakening. And if we can focus and shift our perspective more that way, then that is the place that we are manifesting from. Are the Antarctica statues real? I'm highly skeptical. I will say that. Absolutely, Anna. I love that idea. And the more that we can do things like that, I think the better off we're all going to be. Okay, so nobody gave me another topic. If you did, I missed it. Aside from the Antarctica statues, which I don't know that that's a topic that I really want to go too far into right now. So if you guys have something you want to discuss, let me know. In the meantime, I want to let you guys know that I have been making progress on the book, and I'm really excited about that. It is slow going because I have to do it right now at the end of the day, after my work day. And that's not ideal because by that point I'm usually pretty worn down and my energy level's pretty low and everything. But I've been sticking myself to that schedule, making sure that I'm contributing to it. I'm furthering the project each and every day. So there's actually been some good progress instead of just me talking about it. The title of the book I can share with you guys. It is admittedly a little pretentious, but I chose to go that route for a reason. But the title of the book is An Aquarian Handbook for Surviving the Apocalypse. And it's designed to be just that. And again, it is a little pretentious to state something like that contained within this book is what you need to know in order to survive. First of all, I don't think it's really about survival at all. It's about navigating the intense energy shifts as things change and evolve. But not only that, but understanding physically what's going on in the world around us, with the earth changes, the magnetic field, the climate's shifting, the increase of extreme weather events, and understanding that all of those things are not anomalous, they're not unrelated. And at the same time, those things are happening within our bodies and within our energetic bodies as well. So the structure at this point is half of the book being about the physical aspects of the cycle, telling the full story of the cycle, the history of it, the last cycle, presenting the evidence scientifically of the physical mechanism of the cycle, what triggers it, the ins and outs of how it works, and everything that we know about it scientifically. And then moving from that into, okay, so this is a thing, the cycle, now what? So the second half of the book is designed to be so now what? What do we do about that? What does this really mean at the individual level, and what can we do about it? That's the part of the book that I'm most excited about. I like the title. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I love the navigation aspect, a roadmap of the new energy fields of consciousness. That's really the overarching theme of the book. That's exactly what I'm trying to, where I'm trying to go with that. The name of the book really was something that it just kind of popped into my head. I didn't really try to work it out for myself. I didn't try to, there wasn't a process of, coming up with this title. It just popped into my head, so I decided to run with it. The navigation aspect is probably more realistic and probably more for what I'm going for, as opposed to, again, I don't think that this is about survival at all. Survival is a low vibrational frequency. It's a base frequency associated with the root chakra, and it is necessary for life, right? But this entire thing, this entire shift is about rising out of those lower dimensions of consciousness, of fight or flight, of survival, of my needs are my immediate needs, there we go, are all consuming, all important. And that is by necessity, it is a selfish level of consciousness, because when you're operating from that level of consciousness, you can't afford to worry about the other people around you, because your survival is paramount. It's absolutely necessary, right? And so as we rise up to higher levels of consciousness, then that's not the case. And that's the whole point of the Aquarian age, of ascending to higher levels of consciousness. Sheepadoodle, absolutely. And that's one of the things, one of the main topics of this book is demystifying the chakras. And this is not something, I think, personally, that people can afford to not be aware of, especially knowing what I know about the cycle and what is unfolding and what is going to unfold in the future. Let's just talk about that. I think that this is something that we should discuss. I like that, Brandy. There probably is such a thing somewhere. So, there are many reasons why I think that anyone who really wants to navigate the waters in which we find ourselves right now with this cycle should have a working understanding of the chakra system, is because they're much more than just spinning balls of energy within our body. That's usually the Western conception of what a chakra is that it is a spiraling mass of energy, 7 of them within the body. That is true, but it is a sliver of truth. The reality is that they are vortexes of energy, and because it is a vortex, that they are vortexes of energy, and because it is a vortex, it is pushing outward and pulling in at the same time through each of those vortices of energy. And deeper than that, they are a portal to a dimension of consciousness that we all have. We all have these 7 chakras, and we experience life through those dimensions of consciousness. Let's just say, as an example, since we were already talking about it, let's say that you had a rough childhood, and maybe you were born into a early childhood family environment. Maybe you had an abusive parent who was an alcoholic, just as an example. And you frequently felt unsafe because of that. And your parents were always fighting. Maybe your dad, because of that. And your parents were always fighting. Maybe your dad left. And so that tumultuous early childhood environment taught your young mind that the world is an unsafe, unstable place, and that you had to really fight for stability, for safety, for security. And you didn't know how to process properly all of those emotions and all of that energy that you experienced in that area of your life. So it manifested itself as trauma in the root chakra, because that is the dimension of consciousness where you experience those things, right? Because again, it's not just a ball of energy, it's a dimension of consciousness. And so that trauma acts as a blockage. It can trap the energy from flowing freely from one chakra to the next, from, as your young body evolves, from ascending up into the higher levels of awareness, the higher levels of consciousness. And so now as an adult, without that trauma being fully healed, without that energy being reclaimed, then the energy is stagnant. And in essence, you can be trapped, your consciousness can be trapped in that level of consciousness, so that you experience life through the lens of your root chakra. And that lens is colored by our traumas. So even the lens that you are experiencing life through is not a clear lens, because your early childhood experiences have twisted and distorted the energies of the root chakra. So now everything that you experience in life filters through, because again, this vortex pulls in from your outward environment and it pushes out energy through that dimension of consciousness. That energy filters through that lens both ways. So you experience the world around you through that distorted lens because of the trauma, and you express yourself to the outside world also through that distorted lens. And often that manifests as maybe a partner in your life who reflects back to you the experiences, the environment, and the situation of your early childhood. So you might find yourself in a committed partnership with an abusive alcoholic, or maybe somebody who does not have stability, who has issues with stability. And so that truth is mirrored back to you. And because that is the primary lens through which your consciousness is experiencing reality and projecting outward into your reality. And that's just one of the chakras, right, that we all have. I find that that's the hardest part in life, is protecting yourself from outside energy. It's funny that you said that, because this is exactly where I was getting ready to go with this topic. The reason why I say that the chakras are so important now, I mean, they're always important, but much more so with the time that we find ourselves in, is because it's not simply balls of energy. And it's even more than just dimensions of consciousness within our body. They generate an energetic field. Each and every single one of the chakras emit energy from outside of our body like a cocoon in layers, layer after layer after layer. And it forms a protective shield around our bodies. Each and every one of the chakras do this at different vibrations, the vibration that is associated with that chakra. So it's like multiple layers of energetic shielding. Whenever This is one of my favorite examples. Let's say you meet an individual and you love this person. In order to truly love that person, you have to create an opening in your aura, in your energetic field that is generated by the heart chakra. You have to create an opening to allow their energy into your heart space. For that person, their energy becomes the key that unlocks the door to this opening in your heart chakra. That's why the people that we love have the ability to hurt us more than anybody else, because Joe Schmo on the street, we're shielded against. We have barriers up, we have shielding in place. But your significant other, your husband, your wife, your parent, your child, whatever, you have given them a key, essentially. You have created an opening in your field that goes directly to your heart chakra. Every chakra has the capacity to do this. And if you have trauma, like I mentioned before, in the root chakra, and that is not healed, then that is a chink in your armor. That is a hole in your force field where things can penetrate in and impact your energy more than they should be able to. Once that is healed, the field is regenerated. I'm all out of keys. Oh, nonsense. There's a remarkable amount of correlation between the magnetosphere of our planet and our auric field that is generated by our bodies. And they serve very similar functions, right? And I honestly believe that there is a connection between those two because everything is connected, right? Science has believed for a very long time that the Earth exists in a vacuum and that what happens in outer space has no bearing on what's happening here on planet Earth. Whatever happens on the sun has nothing to do with what happens on the Earth. But now we know that these things are connected. They are coupled together electromagnetically. So if the sun experiences a vibrational shift in its energy, the Earth does also, because we are connected electromagnetically, and our bodies are likewise connected to the Earth. So the magnetic field is undergoing some changes right now. The chakras of the Earth, you could say, are reducing the electromagnetic output of the field as they wander and move, as the polar shift progresses. The field is getting weaker and weaker by the day as the poles race towards one another. On the opposite side of the planet, from where the poles are set to meet, is the weakest point of that field, and it grows by the day, getting weaker and weaker, creating an opening in that. A time will come when the poles get close enough together that the field is practically non-existent, and then the magnetic poles disappear and pop up on opposite sides of the planet, and then immediately the field is regenerated. There is a possibility that something similar could happen with our bodies in this. This is just a theory of my own, because I can't help but notice the similarities between the magnetic field and our etheric bodies, our auric field. And I believe that we are coupled with our planet electromagnetically, just like our planet is coupled with the sun. And I think this is how the magnetic field is connected to the veil. So as the magnetic field weakens, the veil thins, The weaker the magnetosphere gets, the thinner the veil gets, until eventually the veil is gone or it's non-existent. And then different dimensions of consciousness exist in the same time and space. They overlay with each other. Again, until the poles merge and then pop up on opposite sides of the planet, and then the field is regenerated. That's the critical point for the fork in the road, the decision that everyone has to make. Because when the veil thins and disappears, and all dimensions of consciousness are overlapping one another, existing in the same space, and then the field pops up and regenerates, we will be sorted by virtue of vibration. Those that are vibrating with the old world and those that are vibrating with the new world. And the veil goes up, and whichever side of that you're on is which side is your reality. It's a work in progress. It's my own personal theory, but it makes absolute sense to me. How do you patch the chink in the armor? By doing the hard stuff. This is the part that nobody likes to do, right? Especially on TikTok. TikTok is full of people who love to talk about shadow work, right? But not too many people like to do it because it sucks. It's not fun. Shadow work that's exactly what we're talking about here. That's having the strength to look yourself in the mirror and see the truth of who you are, to confront all of the aspects of yourself that you don't like to acknowledge, that you don't like to admit, because they're painful. There's a reason why the contents of our shadow are in the shadow. There are parts of ourselves that at one time or another we have rejected. Maybe one time you acted out of character and you snapped on a loved one, just as a minor example. We can tend to repress that experience and that memory because we don't like to see ourselves in that light. The truth is, it is a reflection of who you are, at least of who you were at that time, at that level of consciousness. But we sweep it under the rug and hide it in the shadow, away from the light of consciousness. And we do that our entire life, just like the trauma from childhood that we were talking about. It's painful. We don't want to talk about those things. We don't want to think about it. And we certainly don't want to feel the energies that we were in going through those traumatic experiences. So we hide it in the darkness, right? But that is a part of ourself. And that energy does not go away. It is a part of ourself. And it will stay there and fester and pop up in our lives in unexpected ways until it is dealt with. So how we fix the chink in that armor is by shining light into the darkness, which is exactly what is happening at a collective level on the world stage right now. That's why we're having congressional hearings on disclosure. That's why child sex trafficking rings are being exposed before the world. That's shining light into the darkness. But with shadow work, we do that for ourselves. We look at all of the pain, but with shadow work, we do that for ourselves. We look at all of the painful, uncomfortable, unacknowledged parts of ourselves that we at one point or another rejected. We embrace those parts of ourselves. We excavate down into the depths of ourselves, and we fully feel the feelings that we weren't able to feel at that time, such as with your past life trauma or childhood traumatic experience, whatever it is. We allow ourselves to fully feel that. And as we do that process of feeling those emotions, that energy is bubbling back up through the surface, and then we can transmute it. And in that process is the key to the healing. Tears, especially, is a function of alchemy. It is of alchemy. It is a shifting of the energetic process, so that you can cleanse yourself of those energies. And whenever you do that and you free that trapped energy, the blockage is removed. And then you can free your consciousness to experience heightened levels of consciousness. Using the example of the root chakra, then you can, ascend up to the higher levels, of consciousness, and begin to experience life from different perspectives and different realities. And then your entire reality shifts around you, because you're no longer experiencing or expressing yourself through that distorted lens. That process of shadow work is like cleaning the lens and polishing it, so that the light that comes through that lens is more accurate, with less distortion. I hope that made sense to you. If it didn't, or we need to talk more about it, just let me know. Brandy, thank you for sharing that. That is a difficult thing to come to terms with. A lot of people, including myself, have been through that. The hard emotional BS, ick. Yeah, exactly. Tony, you're 100% correct, my friend. I don't think that the healing is ever complete. I think that it is a continual process that we have to commit ourselves to always trying to improve ourselves. Andrea, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, my friend. Our deepest medicine. That's where forgiveness of self and others comes in. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The forgiveness of self, in reality, is probably the most difficult for a lot of people, myself included. It is much easier for me to forgive a complete stranger than it is for me to forgive myself. There's a reason we were made to do that. The hardest, yeah, for sure. All right, everybody. So I probably got time for one more topic before I close this live out for tonight. So if you guys have anything in particular you want to discuss before we close this out, just let me know. I will be going live again Saturday this week at the regular time at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Lemuria. This is something that I've actually been trying to decide if I want to try to incorporate that with my book or not. Ayana, do you mean specifically the individual that I was talking about, that the Mahdi that has declared himself the Messiah, or if you're talking about just in general? Okay. I honestly think you could do a quick Google search. Actually, let me just do that real quick. I want to see if he actually pops up that way. I'm pretty sure if you just Google Mahdi and maybe 2025. Yeah. Okay, so if you just Google Mahdi 2025, which is spelled Mahdi, it will it pops up the, AI overview that gives you an overview of what the Mahdi means, because that's not a name, it is a title. But if you scroll down, the very top video result is a video talking about this individual. Yes, bittersweet art, that's actually where that name came from, and it basically means Messiah. There's more to it than that, but that's where it originated from. There's more to it than that, but that's where it originated from. Wow, you guys gave me a whole bunch of awesome questions in here. How do we know if we had a past life? That is a... How do we know if we had a past life? That is a big topic. There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot involved with that. I honestly believe that the vast majority of people that are alive on the planet have had a past life, have had numerous past lives. There's always exceptions, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that is always the case, but that is my own personal belief. There are many different ways that you can work to uncover those things. And my first recommendation would be to investigate past lives for yourself. And I don't just mean yours in particular. I mean, just see what all information is out there about reincarnation, about that process, the different belief structures around reincarnation, and maybe stories about other people's past lives and stuff like that. Because in that process, you will be exposed to not only the theory of reincarnation, but also different modalities for experiencing past lives. The reason for that is because we're all different. And I can say past life regressive hypnosis is the best way in the world, because for me, that's the truth. But for you, it might very well not be, right? It's different for each and every one of us. So I think being exposed to a wide array of possibilities, and that is a good idea. And if you feel yourself particularly drawn to a certain one, that's what you should focus on, in my opinion. And in fact, I guess I should say this. If you have felt, especially earlier on in life and periodically throughout life, if you felt yourself inexplicably drawn to certain places or certain periods of time, and you don't really know why, you just always felt drawn to, say, medieval France, there's probably a reason behind that. And oftentimes, people who have either spontaneously recalled past lives, or who have undergone regressive hypnosis, or experienced a near-death experience where they had a recollection of past lives or whatever, many times what has happened is they have experienced a past life in the time and place that they have been drawn to for most of their life, and they did not ever really know why. That doesn't have to be the case, right? But it typically is. So that's something that every one of us has access to. If there's certain periods of time, certain places or things like that that you feel drawn to and that you have for a long period of time, I would consider that as a possible indication of a past life for you to explore further. Can you explain how your one would know things that others not aware of yet, like how you are? Brandy, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me there. Are you saying how can I explain how I would explain something to someone else if they're not aware of it yet? Is that what you mean? Voxter, thank you for sharing that, my friend. I really appreciate that. Like me seeing Merlin in you. That's really interesting. I'll have thoughts or dreams that project future things. I won't know it until it happens. Reading Casey brought all of my past lives up. See, and that's one of the main reasons why I recommend that, because it's almost like, and I won't say it's almost like, I'm just going to flat out say, I think the way that this works in general is that we have thoughts that structure into beliefs about certain things. Let's say if your belief is YOLO, right? You only live one time. And after that, nothingness or whatever. If that is your belief, you have closed off your mind. You have closed off the potential to experience anything beyond that. And that doesn't have to be set in stone, right? But as a general, I think that that's the way that reality operates, because you are projecting that level of understanding and you are manifesting from that frequency. But if you remain open to the possibility of manifesting from that frequency, but if you remain open to the possibility of whatever, because we don't know, then many things can come your way. And if you're on the fence, you don't know about something like reincarnation, and then with an open mind, you look at it, look at both sides of it. Like, is there any evidence for reincarnation? What is the, evidence against reincarnation? And then you look at these things and weigh that information for yourself. Then you are opening up a channel, a doorway in consciousness to allow those things to be revealed to you. What you are seeking is seeking you. And so if you are seeking your past life recollection, it is also seeking you. And so, again, if you're wanting to explore those things, I would recommend by diving in and exploring them with an open yet critical mind. I definitely do not recommend accepting everything that you come across blindly. As always, my personal motto is think for yourself, question authority. And while we're on the topic, if anybody is on the fence and they want to see the evidence of reincarnation, my go-to source for actual scientific evidence is Dr. Ian Stevenson, because he is pretty much the only source of scientific scrutiny when it comes to reincarnation. He was an Ivy League trained psychiatrist. He was actually the department head of psychiatry at the University of Virginia. And he set out originally to disprove once and for all reincarnation, and dedicated his entire life to studying thousands and thousands of cases where people claim to have been reincarnated, claim to have a recollection of past lives. And he studied these things with scientific scrutiny, and pretty quickly decided not only could he not disprove it, there was actual scientific evidence to support a belief in reincarnation. And his work is top notch. There's some really, really interesting stuff in there. Past lives in the Holocaust and also on the Titanic. Wow. There's a lot of heavy energy. A lot of heavy energy in that. Knowing of how everything works. Brandy, are you asking me specifically, like me as an individual, how I talk on like all of these topics? I don't know if that's what you're asking me or not. I'm so behind on my comments right now. I apologize, but because I know everything you're talking about, but I can't explain it or teach it like you do. Okay, I got you. I, for one, would recommend investigating your personal astrology. It's the first thing that popped into my head. I don't know, right? I don't know you personally. I can't say for sure. It's different for every person. I have a North Node in Gemini. Gemini rules communication, and your North Node shows your calling, your purpose, what your soul came here to do. And a North Node in Gemini came here to talk. They came here to share information with people. So this is my soul's purpose of what I'm doing. So I have spent lifetimes developing not only the knowledge and learning these things, but developing the ability to effectively communicate those things with other people. It doesn't come so naturally for everybody, and it's not something I'm comfortable with. It might be what I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't like the spotlight. I don't like talking in front of other people at all. It's something that actually makes me quite uncomfortable, but that's why I'm meant to do it. But my point is, you can learn a lot of information about yourself from studying your own personal astrology. And I would look at your placement of Mercury. I would look at what you've got going on in the third house, and I would look towards your nodes, the north and south node, and see what you can glean from that. There's many different other things that you could look at, but those would be the key indicators I would look at. And nothing is set in stone. Astrology doesn't work the way that mainstream whatever tells everybody that it does, that these heavenly bodies exert an energy and influence upon us, and it's we have to just deal with it. Right? That's not really the way that it works and functions. We are meant to rule our stars. We are meant to rule our charts, not to be controlled or dictated by them. So the more you know about the energy represented in your natal chart, the more power that you have, the more that you're able to know yourself, because knowing yourself is the source of that power, right? Even if you were to learn, let's say if you learned that you had some hard aspects with your Mercury placement, some squares, and it was manifesting as a difficulty to communicate, that doesn't mean that you can't speak well, right? What that might mean is that you have an obstacle that needs to be overcome. So maybe your thoughts are all 100% there and very involved and intricate and detailed, but the bridge between the thought and the tongue has an obstacle in place that needs to be overcome. Your astrology can point to that for you and help you to get to that point. And again, I can't say what it is for you, but I do recommend starting there with your astrology. Lawoftime.org. Thank you for sharing that, my friend. I've never seen that. Okay, I'm going to try to catch up with you guys real quick. Okay, Okay, I'm going to try to catch up with you guys real quick. And it was just exactly the same for me. I prayed for a very, very long time, in truth, for years, about the powerful spiritual experience that I had, to understand it, for the truth to be revealed to me. And Spirit answered my prayers by connecting very let's say, I can't think of the word that I'm looking for now. It's very synchronistic, the way that Spirit used Edgar Casey to answer my prayers, because everything that I had experienced and all of the specific questions I was asking, the things I was struggling with, were the very exact things that Edgar Casey struggled with and wrestled with in his own life. And that was what really triggered my spiritual awakening. You're very welcome, Brandy. I hope that helps you. Thank you, Dragonfly. Very kind of you. Joy, Edgar Casey, is that who you're talking about? Oh, Dr. Ian Stevenson. Okay. Do I have a moderator in here still that can type that in there for me and pin it? That's for sure with Gemini. Bear with me, guys. There we go. Okay. Give me a second. Let me type that into the comments for you. Give me just a second here. If I can get my phone to cooperate with me. The one who studied reincarnation. Yeah, it's Dr. Ian Stevenson. My phone is being really, really slow right now. And of course, autocorrect is trying to change his name. It's Dr. Ian, not isn't. Is trying to change his name. It's Dr. Ian, not isn't. Okay. So, if you've not heard about the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson and you take the time to go look into it, I think you will be very pleasantly surprised with the information you find. I would specifically recommend the topic that he championed later on in his research. He discovered that a large percentage of the time with people who recalled a past life, that they would have birthmarks that would correspond to the death wound of their previous incarnation. And a lot of these studies took place in India and places like that in Eastern civilization. And a lot of them, they had recent past lives, not something from hundreds or thousands of years ago, but in numerous cases, he had people that passed away and then were immediately, or with very brief interim, were reincarnated, and then they recalled their past life. There was one instance in particular that really struck me, where a boy was very adamant that he had been reincarnated, and he actually wound up leading investigators to a nearby village, to where he knew everyone there by name. He claimed he was such and such person. He gave everyone's description, their names. He led the researchers straight to this place,
And they wound up catching his killer from a previous incarnation because he remembered so vividly all of the details. And he claimed that he was shot in the chest by a shotgun. And this boy had a strange birthmark on his chest with a big hole and then a bunch of smaller holes all the way around it. And Dr. Stevenson was able to find an autopsy report from the previous incarnation and took a picture and overlaid the autopsy report with the picture of the boy he remembered. And the patterns lined up perfectly, the birthmark with the death wound of the shotgun blast. And so he developed this theory that birthmarks are an energetic imprint of our previous incarnation, and that can often point to how we died in a previous lifetime. And there's some really interesting examples of that if you dig into his research. Brandy, I would definitely look into that. And as Anna says, if you're interested in these topics and you're not familiar with Edgar Cayce, that is probably my number one recommendation for a good place to start, because the Edgar Cayce information is absolutely top notch, and it covers so many topics in the Edgar Cayce material that it is truly life-changing if you've never dug into it. I highly recommend it. Yeah, Dr. Brian Weiss. Yeah, there you are.
Thanks for letting me know about the sound, guys. I hope it's better. I moved my phone a little bit. I'm actually going to go ahead and end the live for now. Sorry about the sound, everyone. It's clear now. Okay. So it's reached that point. I need to go ahead and end the live for now, and probably continue working on writing my book for a little bit before I go to sleep. So thank you all so much for being here, for sharing this time and space with me. And I want all of you to know that it means a lot to me for you guys to be here, because the way I see it, you are gifting me a platform, and you are giving me your time and your energy to hear me speak my truth. And that is what I feel I've been called to do. So in essence, you guys are giving me the gift of being able to pursue my calling, and that means a lot. So thank you all so much. I love each and every one of you guys. I will be live again Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for the regular Soul Group meeting, and I hope to see you guys all then. Yes, I'll have to do that on Saturday, though, because I don't have my cards with me tonight. So thank you all so much. Hope everyone has a fantastic night, and I will see you all again Saturday. Have a good night.